This video is the first in a series that is designed to help you give valuable information to Jehovah's Witnesses so that they can make an informed decision about their religious beliefs. It is intended to do for the witnesses what you would want done for you if you were a witness. This video series is about technique as well as content. I will recommend not only what to say, but how to say it and what not to say. Throughout this series, you must keep in mind the principles of Colossians 4, verses 5 and 6, and 1 Peter 3, verse 15, and follow that. You cannot ask the witnesses to be obedient to the Bible if you are unwilling to follow these two verses. There in these two verses it says your presentation should be gracious, gentle, respectful, and be tasty. Making accusative remarks or using sarcasm has no place in this. You will not play Bible ping pong where one person delivers a Bible verse and then the other person ignores it and passes a verse back. Instead, you should adopt the attitude of a newspaper interviewer, someone who primarily asks questions and makes a few comments. So throughout this series, you will passively listen to what they have to say and at a few key points, make some comments that are so tasty that they will hopefully ask you for a further explanation, and then you can talk. You can compare this to Paul's approach in Acts chapter 17, verses 16 through 31. Paul was agitated that the city was full of idols and idolaters. Did he convict the people? Did he confront them and accuse them? No. He said, I can see that you are very religious people, and I see in your city an altar to an unknown God. Well, I am here to tell you about that unknown God. Paul was gracious, gentle, respectful, and his presentation was tasty. So when you get an opportunity to talk with the witnesses, you're going to try to get them to offer you their favorite publication, this book. What does the Bible really teach? You can do that by saying that you are curious about different religious beliefs and would be interested to know more about their religion. Do they have a publication that gives a broad sketch of their fundamental teachings? They will likely offer you this book. Say you would like to borrow the book to see what they teach. Explain that you currently have a belief, but if you found something better, you would pursue it. After you accept the book, say that you will read it and ask if they could come back and in a couple of weeks to discuss it and see if you have any questions. Get their name, their phone number, so that you can coordinate a meeting time and in case you need to reschedule. Now, I have researched this book word for word and am preparing this video series as a response. I'm using their 2006 printing. Unlike the books that the Watchtower has produced in the past, this book is largely within the mainstream Christian belief system. Only about 2 to 3% is unacceptable within the conservative evangelical view, and most of that is in their appendix in the back. Oh, don't worry about witnesses watching this series. Their leadership has warned them not to get on the internet, not to look at YouTube, and not to look at videos that offer religious views that are different from theirs. A loyal witness will not watch these videos. As you study with the witnesses in their book, What Does the Bible Really Teach?, you will eventually reach page 13, where it discusses their belief around the personal name of God. Primarily, they are teaching you that they prefer the traditional pronunciation Jehovah for the Hebrew name of God, which appears almost 7,000 times in the Old Testament. They are very proud of their use of this name, and they use it in their translation of the Bible, which is right here, which is the New World Translation. Okay? Now, in this book, that was page 13. 2 pages later, on page 15, okay, which is there, and these 2 paragraphs, page 15, is where we have our real concern, because it quotes 2 verses from their Bible, both of them from the New Testament book of Revelation. And in both verses, they use the name Jehovah. Those verses are Revelation 15:3 and Revelation 4:11. And it's quoted right there in the paragraphs. A reader who is familiar with the Bible and how it is translated would find this astounding. Why? Because a translation is supposed to transport the source text which is in Greek, and render it in the target language, like English. But there is no Greek New Testament manuscript that has the full Hebrew name of God, which could be rendered, of course, as Jehovah. This is their Kingdom Interlinear, another one of their publications. This is the Greek text that their translators used to produce their New Testament. The name Jehovah is not in the Greek text. You can check that. If you had a copy, you could look at, for example, I'm going to look at a verse here in Revelation 22, verse 5 and 6. Okay? It doesn't appear there. The name is, in the Greek, it's not there. It says Lord. Okay? And they will, instead of using Lord, they will replace it with the name Jehovah. Now, in the book here in Revelation, the Greek, again, does not have God's Hebrew name, full Hebrew name. And in this book, when they use it in those two Greek New Testament verses there in Revelation, the book does not explain how they can use the name or why they would use the name Jehovah, even though there is no ancient New Testament manuscript that uses the name. The issue is this: when is it all right to insert a word into the Bible? The Watchtower is here in their translation and copied in their book, has replaced the title Lord with the name Jehovah. Is that appropriate? In some cases it might be. If a Greek text were talking about numerous persons and then it uses the word he, that might be ambiguous in English. So a translator will examine the Greek grammar to see if it indicates who is meant, and then for clarity might insert the name. But the verses we read were not confusing. When it said Lord, you knew who was meant. The Watchtower inserts the name Jehovah in their New Testament 237 times, even though no Greek manuscript of the New Testament contains the full Hebrew name of God. Not one. The English is not so ambiguous that a translator needs to insert a name. And for those 237 times the Watchtower inserts the name Jehovah, it is not because of the Greek text or the grammar. This is the difference that mainstream Christians have with this material in this book on page 15. Now, Jehovah's Witnesses will sometimes claim that they insert the proper name because the New Testament verse in the New Testament quotes a quotation from the Old Testament where the name Jehovah appears in the Hebrew text. But that claim is false. For 75% of the time, those 237 references, like I say, 75% of them are not quotations from the Old Testament. Case in point are the two examples we saw in their book on page 15 here in Revelation. Those two verses mention Jehovah, but they are not quotations from the Old Testament. Additionally, look at Revelation 22, 5 and 6. There you will see the word Lord twice in your translation, but in their translation they insert Jehovah. So I'm going to pull that up here. And again, none of these verses is a quotation of the Old Testament. And if you read further on into Revelation 22, and here I'm going to show verses 5 and 6 here, and over here is 22:18. It says, you'll see a warning that no one should add any words to the book of Revelation. That is why mainstream Christians find a problem with this Watchtower practice. When you discuss this, do not get tangled in the discussion, an argument where the witnesses like to criticize other translations for not using God's name. Don't do that. Even some evangelical scholars have the same concern. So do not try to defend some translations. Our concern is about Bibles that deliberately insert words without any textual support, which is what the Watchtower's New Testament does. Also, do not get tangled up in other issues like the pronunciation Jehovah or whether God has multiple names. Leave that alone. The mainstream Christian scholar community generally now believes that God has one name and the correct pronunciation is Yahweh. But English speakers commonly say Yahweh. So when dealing with the witnesses, I prefer two translations that use the name Yahweh. I recommend using either the New Jerusalem Bible or the Holman Christian Standard Bible, the most recent edition, because both use the name Yahweh in the Old Testament. So how should you introduce this information? When you reach page 15 in this book, express your question of Why does their church insert the name Jehovah in these two places in Revelation, when in Revelation 22:18 it says not to insert anything? Just keep repeating the question until you get an answer. Then do not argue, just move on to the next paragraph.